All right, good morning, beautiful people, on a incredible Tuesday, November 7th. Hopefully everybody had a great start to their week, enjoyed a beautiful fall weekend. You stayed out of trouble. Cool. Here we go. So this will be an interesting conversation. Hopefully you're paying attention, because I think there is a precipice of change and we have to be at the forefront of being proactive to change and not reactive to change. So we're going to go through a little bit of a dialogue and conversation as to like where we are and where do we think we're headed. Okay. First, I have a few things up front that I want to go through before I introduce Peter, where Peter and I will have a dialogue back and forth to help you guys understand kind of where we are as a state of the industry. And then just so you know, October numbers came out. So I'm going to help go through the October market stats to help you see what I see as it relates to the industry. And we will wrap it up with some training and education updates. Sound good? Beautiful. All right. So 1 second. I just got to do one thing. Beautiful. All right, here we go. So mission, vision, values, beliefs, and perspectives. I'm going to lead something off real quick with one thing. Okay. And a few organizational announcements and updates. Steve Law will be on 5 and 5 this week on season 2, episode 4 or 5. Pay attention, it'll launch this week. And the listing network launched. We're also including buyer needs, so make sure that you're paying attention to your emails, and we're also supporting and sending out the report as it's submitted by you guys. Cool. Now back to your regular scheduled programming as to what I expected. Holiday party December 1st. Okay, last chance to reserve discounted rooms. We actually sold out the hotel room block. You know what I like about that? Peter, I think you would appreciate that. That's what we call a risk mitigation strategy. So if we had actually called the St. Kate and asked for more hotel rooms, because we sold out the room block. So there's more hotel rooms that are available. Again, a very good risk mitigation strategy. Last day to reserve discounted rooms at the St. Kate. Please feel free to scan the QR code. Now, here's where I wanted to go to. Okay. To whom much is given, much is expected. To whom much is given, much is expected. Okay. And I want to level set with you in one way really quickly before we get into the content with Peter. Okay. Relatively speaking, this group has had by all success standards and measures, a wildly successful year. Okay. In a market where there's commission compression, right? I don't think that's a secret. In a market where units and volume are down, depending on the month, mid-20s, to have a group that's basically down single digits on GCI, to whom much is given, much is expected. Okay. And I want to level set with you because we've been doing something over the last several years that, whether you've been paying attention or not, I think you should know. Okay. About 4 or 5 years ago, we partnered with the Work Done Foundation. And at the holidays, to whom much is given, much is expected, we raised about $25,000 to give a fully furnished home to a single family mother through Habitat Through Humanity and the Work Done Foundation. It was an incredible day. We gave it right before Christmas. We partnered with a handful of partners in southeastern Wisconsin to outfit it in a way, and it was a really impactful day. We've done a variety of things in leveraging our success as we celebrate you and your successes at the holiday time. We leverage a variety of ways in which that we say, to whom much is given, much is expected. And I know there's a lot of uncertainty in the market. There's a lot of uncertainty as to where the real estate industry is headed. There's a lot of uncertainty. And yet I know today, a lot of us have been very blessed and should be very grateful as to where we sit today and as it relates to our relative to performance and the income that we've derived out of this business. Make sense? So with that, for the second year in a row, correlating to a 500 plus person celebration on December 1st, we are launching a campaign with the United Way. And here's why I chose and why we chose the United Way. Okay, couple things. One, I've been a part of the United Way going back to my days at Miller. When I was on the United Way campaign at Miller, we raised over $1.5 million. Okay. The cool thing about the United Way is they touch organizations that I guarantee touch something that you are passionate about. And as an organization, one of the challenges that I have is someone who is incredibly giving of time, talent, and treasure is this. It's nearly impossible to pick and choose what everyone is passionate about. It really is. Like, I want to support everyone's passion projects, whether it's time, talent, or treasure. And the great thing about the United Way is a partner organization that provides time, talent, and treasure to over 100 organizations in southeastern Wisconsin. And so with that, one of the people on the United Way committee for greater southeastern Wisconsin is Ginger Lasvik, who's going to help us understand why it is that we partner with the United Way, and then help you see it to why it is that we're partnering with them during this period, because to whom much is given, much is expected. Ginger, I'll flip it to you.
Thank you, Charlie. So we did this last year and it turned out really great. Every year, the United Way does a big push for funding what they're going to do next year. And this year it's $52 million. It sounds like a lot, but a lot of what they raise comes from these workplace campaigns. So last year, our workplace campaign was the first time Keller Williams ran that. We did $12,000, and I'm confident we can do that and probably more. I'm hoping we can do $15,000 this year. They make it really easy to donate. We have a QR code set up. And then I also have paper. I know some of you love paper, and I'm not going to fight that. Okay. If you're a paper person, you come to me and I've got 25 of these. You can fill it out. Like Charlie said, the United Way funds so many things. I'm going to send out an email tomorrow with a link to all the organizations. There's Jewish services, Catholic, there's Habitat, there's domestic abuse. So if you want to specifically earmark your funds, you can do that. And if there's organizations that you already give to, like every year I write $1,000 check to this, it's probably on that list. So you can do it through our workplace campaign and earmark it for where you want it to go. Okay, so it can be something that you're already doing. And then someone asked me, what's the cents on the dollar? It's 90 cents. So United Way is incredibly lean that way. For every dollar you give, 90 cents is going to where you expect it to go. It's pretty good. Okay, this is a generous group of people, and I can't thank you enough for participating. It's one of the things that's within our control is to continually give back, and especially around the holidays, it's perfect.
Yeah, to whom much is given, much is expected. And, it's behooves us to give where we work, play, and how we derive our income. Because the more you give in the world, the more you get in the world, right? So I'll kick it off. I'm going to make a donation of $5,000 to start the campaign. Okay. Here's why. To me, I understand the importance in who they touch, and I understand that the United Way touches a lot of organizations that are important to you. So we'll kick it off with the first 5,000, knowing that, quite frankly, my standard is we should be able to get well above 20. Like, Ginger was really happy with 12 last year, and I was like, we can do better. So that's my challenge to this group during the holiday giving season, to kick it off with United Way. And I'll tell you, culminating with the event on 12/1, which is the holiday party, if the 500 people who are coming to that event, if they just gave $25 each, we would easily get there. So I'll leave you with that. Cool? Awesome. We'll follow up with this. Cool. So, Peter Zaroff, a lot's going on in our industry, right?
Absolutely.
And here's what I would tell, guys, I'll kick it off with a little bit of something for you to think about, and then I'm going to jump into a dialogue and a conversation with Peter. Yesterday I heard a conversation with someone and they said this: look, at the end of the day, you don't know the right move to make 100 moves from now, but you know the right move to make the next step. And if you compound the right move, making good decision after good decision after good decision, 100 good decisions from now, you will be in a far better place than where you were 100 decisions ago. And so my message to that is this: I totally hear you and I totally feel you as it relates to the uncertainty of what's ahead. Like, I know change is coming. That's totally inevitable. How we navigate the change is our decision and what we can control. What we can't control is the environment externally to here. And so we have to focus on what we can control, and we as an organization will be proactive in order to make the right step each step of the way. And I will tell you, it's a fluid situation and it will be fluid steps. Okay. But I know that we know what we can control, and we will make good decisions day after day after day, and good decisions day after day after day will compound to good decisions as to where the industry and your career is headed as it relates to that. Make sense? So here's what I asked Peter to do. I asked Peter to jump on and help us understand basically, Peter, in layman, and for those of you guys who don't know, Peter's our in-house counsel that we have on retainer that we utilize in a lot of different ways, mainly around forms, legalese of language. When you get into a little bit of a sticky situation and we're trying to mitigate risk is a theme. Peter helps us do that. And so what I wanted to do is, Peter, from your professional opinion, kind of like give these guys in layman's terms, where are we at today with the state of the industry and what went on last week?
Sure. So number one is everyone should understand I'm a local attorney in Madison, Wisconsin. I represent 6 brokerages. I understand a lot about brokerage law in Wisconsin, but what we just saw was a potential, industry changing event last week that nobody yet knows how to react to. So we're all reading tea leaves, I'm myself included, but I can at least speak to what it means legally and what happened legally, and then we can all try to read those tea leaves of what happens next. So what happened was there's been a lawsuit pending since 2019 in a federal court in Missouri, and there's a sister case in Illinois, and it dealt with the commission structures. And so it dealt with the plaintiffs were sellers who were represented by a number of major brokers, Keller Williams obviously included, Berkshire Hathaway, Remax, a huge percentage of the brokers in the country. And these sellers were suing. What's that?
You're good.
Okay, the sellers were suing, saying not just that they didn't understand commissions, which is how a lot of people understand this, but that the commission structure, and specifically cooperative commissions, where listing agents offer an offer of compensation to buyer's agents, and that's how buyer's agents get paid, a structure that's been in place for over 100 years, that very structure violates the antitrust laws and was an effort of fraud and collusion between the National Association of Realtors and these major brokerage firms, and that it should be stopped, and that the seller should be awarded damages. And the theory was that if sellers charge if listing agents charge sellers 6% and then take 3% of that to charge buyer's agents, the sellers say, well, why couldn't I have just paid 3% and let the buyers deal with it? And there's some merit to that. That makes sense. In other countries, that's how it's handled. And there's some reasons why that doesn't work. But the end result was that the jury found in favor of the sellers and awarded $1.78 billion of damages to those sellers and against all these various defendants, including the National Association of Realtors and Keller Williams, which can be trebled, meaning tripled, to over $5.4 billion by the judge. And the judge can still fashion other remedies, which would be injunctive relief, they could say, you can't do this any longer, you have to do that. That's what we don't know is next, is what additional remedies. But one important thing for everyone to understand is this was a federal case in the District Court of Missouri. It doesn't create law in Wisconsin or anywhere else in the country. It doesn't directly impact us. It all indirectly impacts us because it's going to change what they do in Missouri. It's going to change what national brokers and the National Association of Realtors do. And as you probably have all heard, it's leading to copycat lawsuits all over the country. And those copycat lawsuits are what we fear the most, which is what's next, and we don't know. So, these are going to be appealed. Everyone knows that. Appeals take anywhere from 2 to 6 years, or longer to run their course. And in the course of an appeal, there also may be efforts at global settlements. And the idea of a global settlement is, if you look at what Remax did, is to settle out for a lesser amount and agree that this settlement covers everyone in the country, globally, or in the world. And that way we all agree as an industry, okay, here's what we're paying and here's how we're moving forward. Until we get there, either to an appeal or a global settlement, we are all trying to read tea leaves to figure out how do we respond and what is next.
So, Peter, you and I have had a lot of dialogue in the last week. And we've started thinking about what it is that we need to do to be proactive as it relates to the environment in which we work. Share with the group some of the things that you foresee us implementing as it relates to some of the changes and how we operate.
Sure. So the best we can do is respond to what the mothership, what KWRI tells us, what NAR tells us, the WRA. And so they have some suggestions, and we've modified some of those. And I'll start with all of these suggestions really come down to RE/MAX settled, I think, a month ago. And in their settlement, they agreed to certain policy changes into how they were going to act. And so all the suggestions that we're throwing out there really mirror in many ways what RE/MAX already agreed to, because that's what the plaintiffs who were suing said they would accept. The court hasn't accepted it yet. But so those are, number one is we're going to have new disclosures. And those disclosures, you may have heard about Addendum C from the WRA. We have a modified version of that because I think Addendum C was a well-meaning effort, but a mess. We've simplified it and made it easier to use and less likely to be misused. That addendum is going to just give more transparency. It's actually called commission transparency. The idea is to let the consumer, your seller, know exactly what your commission is, that it's negotiable, and that they have, after negotiation, agreed to it. And that was one of those things that the RE/MAX settlement really focused on, is transparency. Another thing is internal policies, which is if you tell the consumer their commission is negotiable, but internally a brokerage says, well, it's not really negotiable, that's no good. So internally, we're going to have to make some adjustments to assure that commissions really are negotiable, and that the messaging that we're giving to consumers is honest and transparent and real. And so there's going to be some training on that and some adjustments to those things. And then education. Education is going to be key, which is educating all of the agents as to what these new policies are and how to communicate and how to be better, and educating the consumer. And that consumer education is, again, focused on the ideas that there is no set commission. Commission's never free. If you're a buyer's agent, it's never free. Making sure that the consumer understands exactly how you're charging commission, what you're charging, why it's to their benefit, and what value they're getting. And all of those things are going to then dovetail into, in the long run or in the short run, there may not be substantial changes to how you interact, but over the long run, I think the biggest change is everyone's got to get better. Got to get better at communicating, get better at communicating what it is that they're charging, because that was a big subject matter of this litigation, and what value they're offering. Because if you can communicate your value, then what you're charging makes more sense and is more justifiable.
Fantastic, Peter. So let me also ask you this, or help me clarify for the group. One of the things that came out of last week's decision that I think that is very important for the group to hear, that cooperative compensation was not deemed to be legal. Talk a little bit more about that so that these guys understand that, like, it's the act of how in which that you are paid today wasn't actually deemed illegal, and go a little bit deeper into what that means.
Sure. So number one is this was an attack, initially against the idea of cooperative commissions. But as we said, number one, this is a federal court in Missouri, so they can't deem it necessarily illegal. They could, but it won't impact the rest of the country until other district courts agree or until there's legislature changes. But more importantly, the end result so far hasn't been to disrupt that model. It's been to call it into question, and more importantly, call into question the idea of not communicating with your seller how and what you are offering for cooperative commission, the fact that it's negotiable, and the fact that it doesn't have to be charged in all cases. And that has been an issue with the National Association of Realtors and most, I think all MLSs, is that there does have to be a charge. And from an attorney standpoint, from a fundamental legal standpoint, the reason there has to be a charge, it's often a minimum of $1, is because if there's no charge at all, the MLS and this offer of compensation is a contractual agreement between a listing agent and a buyer's agent to cooperate and agree upon how commissions are going to be split. A contract is only valid if there's something called consideration, payment on both sides. A purchase price is consideration and an offer to purchase, right? Well, if there's no offer made at all, now there's no consideration for any cooperation. And so that's where the Realtors Association is really going to be a stickler for. If we're going to have offers of compensation, we have to have at least $1 or something. I don't think that's likely to change for sure in the short run. A lot of people don't think it's going to change in the long run. But for now, it's not, nothing has changed. There are still the ability to offer compensation. You just have to be much more transparent with your sellers about doing that. And our forms already provide for that transparency. It's on page 1 of the WB1. It's right there. But we know there's agents who maybe don't explain it or gloss over it. That's something you're going to have to really explain moving forward. Again, that goes to education and transparency. Is we're going to offer compensation. It's negotiable. Here's the amount, and here's why it provides you value as a seller. And that's something I think a lot of people maybe haven't ever gotten into, or not enough, is there is value to an offer of compensation. It brings you more buyers. It allows buyers to who maybe couldn't otherwise afford your property to look at and afford your property. There's value to it, but that has to be communicated.
And one of the things I want to provide perspective to this group so that you understand, as this has been going on and I've been following it to understand how we as an organization plan to be proactive and change in helping you navigate it, is in the greater Seattle market. They have actually, since 2019, and may get this wrong, so don't exactly quote me on this, but to the extent Seattle has actually only offered compensation on the seller side, and then has always been very transparent as it relates to the buyer side commission as to how cooperative compensation is agreed to in offering from a compensation standpoint. I don't know if I said that totally clearly, but you kind of get what I'm saying. Seattle was very proactive to this starting in 2019. From 2019 to today, the commission rates within that singular market have actually effectively not changed. And so what, to Peter's point, what that market has done in following that as a case study as to where I think we're headed, is that market has got better at articulating their value proposition as to why both sellers and buyers need representation, and how both sellers' representation and buyers' representation is compensated. Does that make sense? And it's a great case study and something that I'm looking to in connecting with my peers in Seattle to help understand, as that change was made in 2019, what was it that you did to prepare your folks for that change? And how did you get from where you were then to where you are today? And how did that change the way in which that agents work within the marketplace? Make sense? Sweet. Peter, one last question, unless there's anything else you have on your mind or what you'd like to share with the group, is, I've gotten questions from peers in the industry, outside the industry, as it relates to Keller Williams' position and those that chose to settle. Give a little bit of the insight. You and I spoke on this yesterday around those that chose to settle versus those that chose to basically litigate this, and will continue to litigate that. Where do you see that from a legal standpoint?
So I think, choosing to settle was an opportunity to cap your damages and know what they are and get out quick with some changes. And, one argument, which I think is a strong one, I think is what Gary Keller and Keller Williams would argue, is that those that chose to settle weren't really going to bat for the industry or for you. They were going to bat to lower their damages and maybe their local agents. I think that those that chose not to settle stayed in the case because they strongly believe in the value of the agent on both sides and the value of the system and how it's helped our industry. And so, yes, settling, the problem is those who settled, the news stories have come out that look at how smart they were. They only got hit with 85 million or 110 million total or whatever it was. But at the end of the day, I think there was a lot of those who chose not to settle, Keller Williams included, were looking at this and saying, that looks to be the cap now, but we're going to fight for our agents because the value that we provide and the value that you provide in this system has been in place for 100 years, has been recognized as legal for 100 years, and has worked. And so they fought for that, and it so far didn't pan out. That doesn't mean it won't pan out long term. There may be an appeal that is successful. There may be a global settlement that's successful. And by the way, that global settlement, I think a lot of people are freaked out by that big number, and it's a freaky big number, but it's also the cap. it's any settlement's going to go down from there. The plaintiffs recognize that, everyone recognizes that. So it is the cap. Now, the problem is once you lose, we've lost a lot. We on the losing side, those who didn't settle, have lost some leverage, but it's likely to settle or be appealed for less. So I think there is an argument that, yeah, boy, RE/MAX was smart. You're going to hear, you're going to hear people who focus on Keller Williams because it's the most recognizable name of the defendants. The other names are sort of holding companies for other corporations and other brokerages, and they're going to hear RE/MAX was smart. But I think the flip side of that is our brokerages that stayed in and then NAR fought for you and fought for a system that really has worked well for 100 years.
Cool. Well, Peter, thank you I appreciate you jumping on to provide us your perspective and dialogue as it relates to what's going on in the industry and the way in which that we see the world and how we will have to pivot with the world in order to make a good decision today and a good decision tomorrow. And as we stack more good days, good things will happen, right? And we have to control the controllables. And what we mean by that is we have to control how it is that we operate. And our job as a brokerage and being proactive to this is to help educate you as to how it is that you work in this environment moving forward. And some of that's going to be forms. Some of that's going to be the dialogues in which we have with our clients, and know that we will be working on an educational component to this to help you work on that dialect with your clients to be able to articulate your value proposition for you to earn the opportunity at the income you desire. Make sense? Sweet. Questions, comments, concerns, or things that you have, or things that's keeping you up at night, or you just need a quick kick in the pants to get you going, give me a call. I'm happy to do it. And know that put the burden of the weight on everything in the world on my shoulders so that I'll help you navigate it, so that the only thing you got to worry about is how you serve your clients at the highest level. Cool? Sweet. Peter, appreciate it. There was a question, as new disclosures is effective when? Trust me, you'll be communicated. We're working on it. It's a very fluid situation that we're working on right now. So stay tuned, group. You will get communication from us moving forward. Cool. Peter, thank you for the dialogue. Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.
All right. I'm going to jump back in here so I can wrap up with a few items for the group. All right. So that's where we are, and that's where we're headed. Upcoming trainings and events. Education seems to be a key component to this. Okay. If you've never heard of script practice and role play, now might be the time to pay attention. Just saying. All right, couple things to point out. KW launched an incredible new podcast called The Millionaire Real Estate Agent. They're on episode 3. I've listened to the first 2. What goes on in between your ears and your RAS is a real thing. And it's an incredibly powerful conversation led by Jason Abrams, the head of industry for KW. This week's episode is Cody Gibson. I've seen a few people ask, like, hey, what are things that you're listening to, or what's different things you're paying attention to from a business standpoint? I think it's been an incredible first 3 episodes. Highly recommend it. If not, podcasts aren't your thing, no worries. I just thought it would be something I'd share with the group. Second, November training calendar came out. You guys can read and pay attention to what it is that you think you should plug into. Next, Nicole Asaki will be out in Lake Country on Thursday, November 9th at 9 a.m. going through financial literacy. Make sure if you want to check it out. Nicole is an incredible person to help you understand how to manage your finances when you decide to make real money. Okay. Willis wants me to remind the group that there's free headshots because mine is 6 years old and he says, I need a new headshot. So headshots are available November 21st in the North Shore office from 10 to 12. I supposedly will be first in line. Next up, here's a big pitch for you. Okay. With everything that's going on in the state of the industry, one of the things that I would be paying attention to is it relates to my training and education. And if there was ever a time to take advantage of what I believe to be the best conference in the industry, which is Family Reunion. And if you don't know what Family Reunion is, it's Keller Williams National Convention. This year it's in Las Vegas. I repeat, this year it's in Las Vegas. Okay. Here's what you need to know. It's incredible content with incredible breakouts that allows you to plug into what it is that you desire to grow within your business. And with the current state of the industry, I would expect to be a lot of things in helping you understand how to articulate your value proposition. That's about what I can say about that. But I would highly, 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 highly recommend you consider the opportunity of attending family reunion. In the past, it had been over President's Day weekend, which I know had put some pressure on families with kids in the schools that didn't have school that Monday. It has been pushed back 2 weeks to February 25th to 29th. And the keynote speaker this year is Mel Robbins, which I just kind of learned who Mel was this week. I feel as if I've been living under a rock. I know I'm slow, but the reason why I'm making this pitch is I do think if there was ever a time to consider making the investment of time, energy, and resources to attend family reunion, this would be the one to do it based on where the state of the industry is and how KW will help you navigate it. Cool. And if you don't know, don't worry. We'll have a panel of those who have been before to help you understand why it is that they made the investment. Cool. There you go. Registration. Stay tuned. All right. October 2023 insights and trends. You ready? Here we go. Here's my theme. Last month, I questioned if stabilization was occurring. There were some things in which the industry where I always say, what? 1 month is an anomaly, 2 months is a trend. Well, guess what? I've seen 2 interesting months of trends. And my initial question as to what I put out there last month as it relates to, are we starting to see stabilization within the industry and the industry starting to settle in on this downward roller coaster that we've been on in the last 18 to 24 months? We're only 2 months in. Perspective's important, but stay with me here is the stabilization that I'm starting to see occur. Okay, here we go. Supply and demand. This is units that went under contract within the month of October. There are 1,629 units that went under contract. That is only down 4% versus October of last year. Now, mind you, remember the previous trends were down 25 to 30%. Last month, it was down 7%. It was the first month where we saw a single-digit decline. This is the second month in a row. 1 month is an anomaly, 2 months is a trend. So the fact that we're down 4% this year versus last year on units that went under contract by only missing the mark by 75 is the first indication of stabilization. Okay. I'll get into it more here on my theme in a second. Sales absorption rates. This is the percentage of inventory that goes under contract in a given month. In the month of October of 2023, we saw 26.5%. That is effectively almost flat to where we were last year is the percentage of total inventory that went under contract. Okay. Flat is a good thing. Average days on market. Okay. This is where I say 1 month can be an anomaly. Okay. In the month of September, last month, I talked about how I was a little concerned from August to September. It went from 27 days on market to 36 days on market. Then we came back in October and we saw 31 days on market. So from September to October, days on market actually accelerated. Okay. And when you compare it versus last year, it was only 3% slower, which is effectively flat because it was 30 days last year, 31 days this year. Again, this is why I say we can't give too much of the alarm bells of 1 month. This is where you got to look at 2+ months of data to determine where trends lie. Again, my question is the market beginning to stabilize? We'll continue to pay attention. Months of supply inventory, this month was 2.4, following the same in month of September of 2.4, just slightly above the latest 24-month average of 2.1 versus last year. It was up only 4%, which is 0.1 increase. Stabilization. I don't know. Like, I want you to hear that, like, that's my positivity of like 2 months into this. Okay, we're seeing good trends, but we're only 2 months in. Now, new unit inventory. In the month of October, there were 2,222 units that came onto the market. Okay. The question is, of the 2,200 units, how many of those listings did you take? That'd be the first question I'd be asking myself. Second thing that you need to be paying attention to, it was off only 3% versus last year, or off only 88 units. That's a significant improvement as to the trends of which we have seen as it relates to new inventory coming to the market. Okay. Now, the reason why I brought units under contract again is part of the reason why we're going to see total inventory rise is when units under contract were 1,629 and new inventory units at 222. That's part of the reason why you're seeing months of supply inventory increase, which I actually don't think is a bad thing. Like, it's actually okay if the tide rises a little bit in order to provide more inventory to the market. We've worked in such a depressed market as it relates to inventory that some of the metrics that we're seeing actually could be healthy as we head into 2024. Okay. Now, expired inventory units. I've heard from a few of you. Shout out to Dan Wild, reached out to me last week, Thursday. Dan, I didn't forget about you. I know that one of the requests is as we have sellers that are starting to freak out or things that are starting to expire, some agents are now starting to reach out as it relates to help or how we have and navigate those conversations. Expired inventory units are on the rise. In the month of October, it was the largest number of expired units we'd seen so far, 664. Now, part of it is the seasonal trend. If you go back the last 2 years, October of last year was 615, October of 21, was 652. We're on trend with where we were, but just be aware that it's seasonally, we're on trend with season, and yet from August to October of this year, we've seen a pretty substantial increase in expired listings. Again, being proactive in our communication and helping our sellers understand where we are in the market at the moment is a good insurance policy to help mitigate you becoming the first listing agent and somebody else becoming the second listing agent. Make sense? We're going to work on some training and education here. We'll add a few things maybe in November, early December to help you work on the articulation of what people say in those moments. Cool? Now, total inventory, there were 6,146 units. I need to update that. That's my apologies. In the month of October, when you look at it, it's only off of the total inventory of where we were in October of last year by 2.7%. Again, we're starting to see trend improvements 2 months in a row on major macro trends. That's positive for the industry as to where we sit so far in October of 2023. Now let's take a look at pricing. Okay. And this was very important to me because if you remember, last month was the first time we had saw a significant decrease in appreciation gains. Okay. And what I mean by that is we had seen anywhere between a 9 to 11% appreciation on any given month, year over year. October of this year, the average was 328,000 in southeastern Wisconsin. It was a 3% increase. That is on trend with what we saw in September. Okay. Median, 285,000. It's up 7.7%, on trend with where we were in September. Okay. In terms of trend lines this year versus last year. So the good thing from a trend standpoint as it relates to pricing is pricing stabilized for 2 months. We stopped a little bit of the slowing appreciation, but it's stabilizing. That's good. Okay. The other thing is it relates to if you're having dialogues with your database and you're reaching out to past clients on their home anniversary and people are wondering what's happened with their appreciation gains and if they bought in too high of the market. Well, a friend of yours that bought a home in October of 2021, they've gained 14% appreciation roughly between the average and the median. Guess what? You can deliver the great news that they didn't buy at the peak. Okay. There's real conversations to be had in checking in with your clients as it relates to their pricing because people want to know. It's the first question I get when I go into Sendix. Now, when we talk about price per square foot, it's a static measure, right? Price per square foot in the month of October, not September, apologies, was $190 per square foot in the southeastern Wisconsin region. It was up 5% versus last year, up 17% versus October of 2021. Okay. Again, these trends have been very in line with where they were in October of this year and September of this year. So my question still persists as we head into November is, are we starting to see where the market is stabilizing, where we may be operating in, I think a flat environment would be a very positive trend in 2024. And you start to see of where the pendulum swings. It could be in the next 6 months, could be in the next 18 months, could be in the next 24 months. I don't know, but stabilization 2 months in, again, 2 months are a trend I'll be paying attention to as we head into November and what that tells us in the first week of December as it relates to stabilization. Make sense? I think it's all positive. I really do. I think change is something we have to embrace as it relates to how we operate in our industry. I think the market is healthy for where we are, despite what's going on in the world. I think we saw an interesting reaction in rates this week, that rates went down. First time we had seen that in a while. You know, we got a little wind in our sails. Don't let you forget that. Okay. And I'll make sure that we keep you apprised as to the situation and what you need to do to be proactive in what's going on. Cool? And I still believe the fundamental truths about where we are and where we are headed. You need to be a hunter, not a gatherer. You got to amplify your intensity and frequency. You got a 2x and 3x. 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 Lastly, my last charge to the group is control the controllables, and to whom much is given, much is expected. Guys, have a great week. Thanks for showing up.